It has never been more clear as we have multiple huge updates to go over today, specifically surrounding one particular player that is not only intriguing, but this update is surprising and came out of nowhere. We're going to break down exactly what that is, discuss what it means going forward, as well as break down the Jays making multiple moves and some huge Jays updates ahead of the biggest series of the season starting tomorrow, folks. But before we get into it all, if you're a part of that percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. You guys have been absolute beast of the support, so thank you guys for that. A lot to go over today, ladies and gentlemen. We're of course going to be talking about a bit of this series that's starting tomorrow, but I want to dive into a new kind of update that flew under the radar. Now obviously the Jays yesterday had a fantastic comeback win. Again, I'm on vacation right now, so I didn't have a post-game video. Those will be returning very soon. But also, thank you guys for bearing with the setup again. Hopefully, the quality isn't too bad. But I want to dive into an update here that dropped and kind of got lost in the sauce of the phenomenal game yesterday. And it said Anthony Santander is nearing a rehab assignment that could begin Tuesday with AAA Buffalo, and Santander will travel with the Blue Jays to New York this weekend to continue his build-up and get more reps hitting right-handed. Santander will get at least 5 games on rehab. So this one is pretty wild because A, kind of an update that came out of nowhere, but B, the thing that no one really expected here is that he has officially, and I covered it in a video last week, but he's officially going to be ramping up, and Tuesday seems to be the day, but we have the timeline regarding his rehab that, is the piece of information that's big here and got revealed. Now, folks, it has never been more clear that Santander is a serious contender to make this Toronto Blue Jays team for the, playoff run down the stretch. Now, something to keep in mind here. Let's say, hypothetically, his rehab assignment begins on Tuesday. That would, of course, be following the New York Yankees series, and he would then require 5 games, which, could take him a week or 2 weeks, something depending on, how often they're getting him in there, which would line him up for a mid to late, September return to the Toronto Blue Jays, which, when you say late September, the wildcard series obviously starts on September 30th, but you would expect him to play a few games, maybe the last series, they play the Rays and teams like that for the Jays. Now, something to keep in mind as well here for his specific, swing. Now, obviously, he is a switch hitter, so Santander got his left-handed swing up to speed fairly quickly as he progressed through rehab. His right-handed swing has lagged behind. Blue Jays hopes that he'll be good to go from both sides by Tuesday and begin his rehab assignment that night as Buffalo begins the series in Rochester. So, again, we know he's a switch hitter. His primary focus right now is his left-handed swing. He's probably going to be playing majority against righties. Against lefties, they might not even, play him as much. And for a guy who signed that $100 million deal, he was supposed to be the everyday guy, especially that, the fact that he's a switch hitter. However, he is now going to be probably for the rest of this year, at least for the Toronto Blue Jays, I'm not saying a platoon guy. I'll probably try to play him every day, see how good he does. But the timeline here of mid-September return, let's say he returns in a couple of weeks, that gives him a few games left rather, for the Jays to see what they have in him before they can choose whether or not to A, have him on the playoff roster, and of course B, play him and really actually see what they have from him power wise. So it's going to be interesting. We know how good Anthony Santander is. You look at his last full year, 2024, when he hit 44 home runs, some decent peripheral stuff. And of course, this year he's hitting only 179 with a 577 OPS. And we've seen him hit some big home runs already this year. Most notably, I believe it was against the Red Sox way back. But it's going to be interesting to see what he does going forward. Hopefully, he'll be able to actually make a contribution, but something that's very important to keep an eye on is how his rehab assignment does, whether he's playing the field, whether they want to stick him at and continue to play him at, the DH position. A lot of interesting things coming up ahead of, again, what's going to be the most important series of the year right now against the New York Yankees starting tomorrow. Hopefully the Yankees can lose today as well. They lost yesterday to the Astros in pretty rough fashion. Shout out to Brian Walsh, the umpire, kind of bailing the Astros out a little bit, but I digress. It helped the Toronto Blue Jays. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on this. Now let's dive into a few other things. Now I want to cover a couple moves from Tuesday because this part isn't really news, but I want to talk about what it means going forward as we prepare for the Yankees series. So the Jays did add Ryan Borucki. We saw him briefly yesterday, and with the one eye towards this weekend series in New York. Now this is why they added Ryan Borucki. We saw him yesterday. He was pretty rough all over the place, gave up 1 run, ultimately got the job done. But Schneider says Little remains the team's #1 lefty option, which is a little bit scary. But they also spoke a little bit on Brendan Little's tweaking his pitches and things like that. To focus on Ryan Borucki here, the Yankees have a heavy left-handed batting lineup. Now, you think about a playoff series, we always talk about this in the channel. If Max Scherzer goes up against the Yankees, Aaron Boone's going to load up lefties, right? And you think about the lefties that they have now that they can use against the Jays in the biggest series of the year. That's basically a playoff series for them and the Jays as well. You're going to have, of course, now Ryan Baracki, who was DFA'd recently, picked up by the Jays. He is really good against left-handed hitters. Struggled a little bit yesterday, but that doesn't change the fact he is really, really good against lefties. He isn't having a great year because of the righties, but the righties have above 1,000 OPS. The lefties have a sub 400 OPS, at least heading into yesterday's game. So that's something to keep an eye out on. I know fans aren't happy with it. You needed another lefty in the bullpen to go up against the Yankees, especially where, obviously, Brendan Little has been greatly struggling. Mason Flaherty isn't with the team right now, all these different things. Going to be very, very curious to see how he does against this Yankees team, because that's going to be the real test. Tons of lefties, and they stagger him. They stagger Jazz Chisholm. They stagger Jason Dominguez, all these different lefties that they have. And, Austin Wells. Ultimately, they got some beasts over there, but hopefully the Jays can take care of business on that front. Now, speaking of taking care of business, heading into the series, the Cincinnati series that just finished up, you can see here from September 1st, it gives an interesting kind of look. Now, you can see here, now keep in mind, this was before the Red series where they went 2-1, so you can kind of do your own math here. But following 2 wins, they now, if they finish, let's say, again, heading into the last series, basically the point of this is, they could basically finish 500 and still, at this point, they could finish the year 500 and still finish with 93 wins if they finish, 500 the rest of the way around there, and which is crazy in the season that they are having, especially going 2-1. A lot of that was in part to a lot of the fantastic players that they have, and we'll dive into that in a second. Quick other note here, which is actually interesting: Reiner Nunez, who I covered briefly in a video recently about the prospects, has been released. Now, he was a guy we saw in spring training a lot. Crush balls, the hardest hit ball in AAA. He's gone, and backup catcher Christian Bethancourt is gone as well, which now they lost 2 of the catchers that were their backups in spring training, Ali Sanchez and Christian Bethancourt. That's of course because they have the new guy who they acquired in the trade fairly recently at the trade deadline for Will Wagner. So that's that. Let's dive into a couple other things here. Now, again, there's so many updates I had to cover for you guys. It's pretty exciting. Springer's OPS is up to 946. Let me know down below if you made it this far. Do you think he deserves MVP voting? I'll heart the comments that answer that if you made it this far. Shout out to you guys. I mean, absolutely, right? Is he top 5 in MVP voting? I think he probably is at this point. He is one of the best hitters in baseball. He comeback player of the year. He should win it. 16 stolen bases even at 35 years old, turning back the clock. We think back to spring training, his average under 200. People were talking about DFAing him. I spoke about it on the channel. I was never one to say they should DFA him. I said that was stupid, but it was a conversation that was being had because of how bad he was the previous couple of years, specifically in 2024. Started off spring training horribly. If anything, it teaches you guys never to pay attention to spring training numbers that much, because Alan Rodham was supposed to be the next star for the Jays, ultimately fell through. Shout out to George Springer, and he's a part of the reason that this is so crazy, where they're in such a good position now. They can finish the year pretty rough and still have above 90 wins on the year. So shout out to Georgie for that. And also shout out to Bo Bichette, who are one of the only players this season with at least an 800 or 300 average with 90 RBIs. The only other player with him, the best hitter in baseball, Aaron Judge. So folks, that'll wrap it up. Let me know down below what your thoughts are. All signs point to Santander returning, and all signs point to and agree with the fact that the Jays have the biggest series of the year starting tomorrow. We'll keep you up to date every step of the way. You guys are beasts. See you guys later.